Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship. It's round 12. It's the final race of season 1 with Invictus Racing League on F1 2018, and we are here at Interlagos in Brazil for what is looking up and what is shaping up to be a pretty excellent and explosive end to what has been a fantastic first season on this game. The Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, named after Carlos Pache, the F1 driver in the 70s who sadly died in an air crash, but picked up his only win here at the circuit. So nice of the guys in Brazil to name him after the late driver. Track built into the hills of Interlagos, featuring many inclines and declines. Can unbalance the car pretty badly around here if you have the setup ever so slightly wrong, as we see the guys starting to ready for the session. 4.3 kilometers, that's 2.6 miles long. With cars around full throttle, around 62% of the lap, so we're doing an average around 42 gear changes per lap. So it's definitely a challenging circuit. It's, of course, the lap was around 1 minute 10, possibly dipping into the mid to late 110s, possibly 1.8, 1.9 if the guys are really on the limit tonight. It's around a medium to high downforce level around the track, and the surface around here does get used quite often, so the surface does fall away and tends to need to be rubbered in throughout the session. So expect to see those times fall in the qualifying session if we do, of course, have a dry session. Circuit, of course, has seen some fantastic moments over the history of it within Formula One. You saw Coulthard and Schumacher going either side of the Minardi down into turn 1, with Coulthard overtaking Schumacher and the Minardi. Webber's crash in the Jaguar in 2003, which then collected Fernando Alonso coming over the blind crest of the hill into the final in the corner at turn 15. Of course, that then gave the race victory at the time to Kimi Raikkonen, but he then passed over the trophy at the next race back to Giancarlo Fisichella. Who can forget Lewis Hamilton's last corner overtake on Timo Glock to win the world title, and equally Senna's win in 1991 in the ailing McLaren, which at the end of the race was running without the use of third, fourth and fifth gear. And of course, the famous shot of him being lifted out of that car's cockpit at the end, having his fingers ungripped from the steering wheel because he was trying ever so hard throughout the race to get that McLaren to the end, and could not lift the trophy on the podium due to exhaustion. So a real showing of true grit for a man that was absolutely gifted within the field of F1. And we'll go on board with the driver who's leaving the grid first, and I believe that's Renault 9. So Renault 9 out in the Mercedes tonight. He's the first one out on track, followed by the two Toro Rosso drivers. That looks like that's Joel V520 and Boy Better Know SB. That's Scott. Of course, guys, if you are watching tonight, feel free to drop in some comments into the stream. Always happy to get engaged with you and find out what you're thinking about how the race is going. As we back from the rear wing of the Petronas Mercedes AMG, they're running a little bit wide into the entry at turn 4 there. Renault 9. He wants to build up a little bit of a gap between himself and the two Toros behind. You don't want to compromise each other when it comes to out. Soft compounded tyre is running wide again over across the grass, and that's not going to do those tyres a lick of good at all. And the two Toro Rossos, yeah, they do get the jump on the Merc coming around into sector 3. So the two Toro Rossos possibly getting themselves a little bit of a hand heading up the hill as they come down to start their first flying lap. What we'll do is sit on board with the leading one, and that's Boy Benno SB. Yeah, sad weather, we're looking pretty grim. Hope it stays dry. Yeah, of course, changeable weather, well known around here at Interlagos, and we're going to go on board with Boy Benno. In fact, what we'll do is we'll sit on board with him as he does the first lap around here at Interlagos, down into turn 1, going from 323 kilometers an hour down to about 106. Through turn 3 and turn 4 at Cava del Sol, down the first straight into turn 4, break down into 4th gear, roll out, quick change up into the 6th gear there for Scott, up into 7th, top gear by the top of the hill, doesn't he, bounces off the limiter in 7th, coming around turn 7 and turn 8 can unbalance the car quite easily if you're set up to ever so slightly off. Now it's into the slow sector 2, 8, 9 and 10. Make sure you don't lock up the front right down into turn 10. He doesn't nicely, kisses the apex of the curve there. Get it turned in for turn 11 at Mugello. And now it's into Young Cow at turn 12, and he does run over the curb nicely. And now it's launch yourself all the way up the hill. Get it up into top gear as soon as possible. Take the inside line. Take as much off of the circuit as you can. DRS opens now. He's going to stroll across the line, and boy better know he's going to do the first lap, and he does a 1:10.3, immediately overtaken by Joel and Renner, who both do a time within 2/10 of that, as Renner 9 does the fastest time currently, 1:10.106. Out on circuit at the moment with SJD 1988 in the Renault. It looks like he's coming around the final sector now. Coming into Young Cow. Up the hill for the Renault driver, SJD 1988. Coming down on to the main start finish line. He's going to come across the line. And it's pole position, provisional pole for SJD. He's the first one to drop into the 1:09s and a low 1:09 there. So almost 9/10 of a second faster than Renault 9 and the Mercedes. So great pace there for SJD. And we'll equally go on board with his sister Renault. And 3 looking to end the season on a strong note as he comes around the final sector now, coming into the final couple of corners here at turn 12. That small kink at 13 just here. It's all the way up the hill. As much power as you can. And it's now across the line for De Lange, and he will go on to provisional second place. So it's a front row lockout at the moment for the Renault team. He's equally 500ths of a second behind SJD, so the two Renaults looking well on form this evening, way ahead of Renault 9 and the two Toro Rossos. Speed Queen 80, your champion-elect for Tier 1 at the moment. She's crawling out of the race, as you see. It's a bit of a traffic jam as we get down to turn 4 there. But Speed Queen 80, currently she's taken your Tier 1 championship. She can take the overall title for the No Assist Championship this season tonight. All she needs is a few points over Scopefield. And what I will do is I will go over the title connotation, what can happen, because there's actually a lot that can go equally with the Tier 2. So it's not all over for these drivers yet, so there's definitely all to play for some of them. And so last race it was Scopefielder who took a dominant victory. Scott recovered from an early spin after taking home second position. Humberstone came home in third, but unfortunately cannot be with us this evening. But Speed Queen will win the overall title tonight if she scores 2 points. So she just needs a 9th place finish, whereas Scopefielder needs to score 3 points himself to take the Tier 2 title. So Speed Queen wins the overall title with 9th, and Scopefielder takes the Tier 2 title with 8 points. But equally, Scope can win the overall title if he wins and Speed Queen retires from the race. He would then win by 1 point. Scope Speed Queen comes in 10th, therefore picking up 1 point. Scope would win the title on countback due to him having 2 wins to Speed Queen's 0. So Scopefielder still well in with a shout of taking the title. Obviously just needs Speed Queen to slip up with the Williams tonight. Sadly, we are not 100% at the moment, so feel free, guys, if you're hearing issues with the commentary at the moment, please drop them into the stream, and I'll see if I can do anything about it. I think I've got all my wires plugged in, but hopefully it's just a momentary issue and we can get past it as Speed Queen comes across the line. She currently only goes 7th for 1:14.6, so not a great lap there for Speed Queen. Well down as Scopefield has put himself up into 1:09.652. Out on track at the moment, we've got Malk, who's just heading out on what looks like his outlap, slow through into sector 1. Nikki 9095 is coming round through the first complex corners through the SNRS down into turn 4 now. Nicky and Sauber had a slightly on-off season, but of course didn't have the best of starts to the season, but taking that absolutely was storming race victory in Singapore for Nicky, so that was definitely his highlight of the season. But he'll be looking to end the season 1 with the no assist championship here with a decent result in the Sauber. Rick in the McLaren still in the pit lane, so it's those three, Malk, Nicky and Rick, still without setting a provisional time, with 9 minutes and 37 seconds left in the title rank, in the timing. Now it's a real engineering challenge as we see there. It's early pit for Nicky and Malk stopping on track, so possibly trying to look to build himself a bit of a gap. It's a bit strange from the Red Bull driver, now starting to wear up there as he has the medium tyres fitted, so we see, does he go? He does go for it, so it was a slow start, possibly compromising his tyre temperatures there. We'll see if it does hinder him down into the first sector. We do know you can run out wide here and find yourself getting invalidated pretty easily. But the track has a lot of cambered corners, so front locking is a real issue around here. Into turn 1, for example, the trap drops away to where when the drivers are turning in. It's really, really hard, especially on the apex, to lock that front left wheel. Equally, you find yourself getting a lot of tyre wear over because you're constantly turning left over, especially from turn 11 to turn 15. So you've got to really look after those tyre temperatures, especially later on into the stint, into the corner that Malk is coming into now, the slow corner up at turn 10. This is where you start to really got to take care of them, because you can find between turn 12 and turn 11, turn 12 right now, it drops down ever so slightly. It really unbalance that car. You can see that slight lump in the surface there, and it can really bottom the car out, and you find yourself sliding off into the infield. And we've seen many drivers in the past having had that issue as Malk bails out of that lap on the mediums, possibly having as you see a 139.5, so Malk having a very slow lap there as he possibly looks at taking next season off in the no assist championship. So we'll go on board with Delanga, so possibly Malk's final race for the moment. Don't worry, you'll be able to catch him in the commentary box next season. He'll be back doing comms on Tuesday and Wednesday night. And of course, guys, I will go through later on this evening, but we have some absolutely electric battles going on throughout the week in the other leagues, with Performance 1, 2 and F3 all going down to the wire when it comes to championship battles. There's still places to be decided. F3, of course, you've got the battle between Colin and Sir Sad, level on points heading into the final race. There'll be a straight fight between those two for the title. Equally, Performance 1 and Performance 2 can both see champions. Delanga now coming around the second sector, just finished the first up into turn 6 and turn 7. Slows it down a little bit slower yet. Looks like he may have bailed out of this lap, so possibly running slightly wide up the hill into turn 6. It's very easy to run out slightly wide into turn 7 and compromise your lap. So does look like Delanga may have bailed out of this one, going ever so slightly. So we'll go on board with Scopefielder. Scopefielder currently sitting in 4th place on the second row of the grid at the moment, a 109.652 his current time in the Haas tonight. Out on the super soft tyres, on the fastest compounded tyre, he's definitely going to have a good opportunity at getting ahead of SJD and Delanga, currently sitting locking up the front row at the moment in the Rona team. But Haas is going to come at the fastest time of the race, qualifying so far. Sorry, I can't get my words out. Could he does? It's 109.118, almost beaten by Renault 9 and the Mercedes, who does a 109.187. So 700ths of a second there for the Mercedes driver, who puts it on second position on the first row of the grid, knocking the two Renaults down to the second row. We've got Joel, Rick, and Malk back out on track now. So we'll go on board. Joel comes over the start-finish line to start his lap, slowing the car down for the CNRSs down in turn 1 and turn 2. Don't run out too wide on the exit. You'll find yourself finishing that lap pretty much as soon as you started it. Now the DRS wide open on the run down to turn 4, hitting 323 kilometers an hour, down to 154 at turn 4. Gets it turned in straight up into towards turn 5, into turn 6 now, and turn 7 at the kink. Runs around into turn 8, just the right hander. Now slowly around turn 9, up the hill into turn 10, which actually feels like it should be right here, but turn 10 is slightly further on. It's ever so slightly kinked, but they do only class it as one corner. Round turn 11 now on the super soft compounder, so the guys out having set that banker lap, now out on faster tyres, trying to make use of this dry track. The Toro Rosso is going to come around. He's climbing the hill, running slightly wide on the exit there, but he's going to give himself as much of the opportunity, driving down off the banks, and Joel is going to come across the line and not improve at all. So Joel at the moment sitting in 6th position. Everyone else in pit lane apart from Malk, who's out on track at the moment in the Red Bull, yet to set a competitive lap time of 1:39.566. Out on what looks like to be the soft compounder tyres. So tried a lap out on the mediums last time round, didn't quite work out, so he's out on the slightly one stage softer compound. Now the soft compound tyres, you see him locking up the front right there for the Red Bull driver, so possibly a bit of a scruffy lap for him at the moment. He'll be looking to finish off the season strongly. Of course, Malk picking up a surprise race victory in Silverstone in Britain in round 6. So Malk's definitely had his season high back there after struggling earlier on. And he's going to come across the line and look to set his first competitive time. And he doesn't, so possibly going for a second lap. Late on the brakes down into turn 1 there. But Joel be coasting his way back in. We'll see if he's... Yeah, so Joel off of the throttle, so we'll still sit with Malk as he's coming around the track up through to sector 2 now, into turn 6 and turn 7. Lifts off ever so slightly, running over the curbing there. Oh, it's way off of the apex there. That will make you run slightly slowly into turn 9 there, up through turn 10. Get it slowed down, get it as near to the apex as you can, run out slightly. Now keep it tight around turn 11 into turn 12. Runs out wide there, that may have really harmed that lap there. Oh, kicking the rear out. That Red Bull's not wanting to go in a straight line for Malk, so Malk possibly struggling to keep the Red Bull, and he does bail into the pit lane. So Malk's still struggling with a competitive lap around this Juan Carlos Pache circuit at Interlagos, Brazil, and he currently sits the final position on the track, and that's 10th place. And Rick is going to come across the line now. We'll see if it's starting. It looks like he is starting the lap. We'll quickly check the lap time for you there, and there we go. Super soft tyres fitted for Rick in the McLaren. Nicely run down through the CNRS's. DRS now wide open up into 8th gear. Braking very late down into turn 4 there for Rick, and he's going to run out slightly wide into sector 2 here. Now climbing up the hill into turn 6. Quick flick of the wheel. Lifts ever so slightly, but nicely done. There we go. That's a much nicer apex there for the Canadian driver, as Malk retires from the session, so possibly not happy with his car setup. And Nicky equally retiring from the session in 7th place at the moment with 1 minute 13 seconds left. Rick looking at going slightly faster. He's going to come across what looks like a Renault just up the road, so looks like it shouldn't compromise him too much heading up the hill. Possibly feeling a slight after effects, a little bit of dirty air, but looks like Rick, but he doesn't, so Rick bailing out of the lap as well. So Rick currently looks like he's going to be starting in 8th. Delanga 93 is out on circuit. He's coming around sector 1. SJD is going to go pole, a 1:09.1 of a second to moment. Scopefielder equally has just started that lap, and SJD, who's just usurped him at the top of the standings, is just ahead of him, so possibly even using a little bit of DRS off the Renault. We'll see if he dips into it. No, he decides against it. So Scopefielder here, knowing that he needs the race victory, he needs Speed Queen to finish, well, either retire or finish 10th at the moment. He's giving himself the best opportunity at that. Oh, you can hear him hit the limiter off there in the Haas car as he enters into turn 8 now. Running out onto the curbing there at the exit turn 9, locking up ever so slightly into turn 10. Scopefielder here as Renault 9 does a fastest lap of 108.852. Absolutely rapid lap there for the Mercedes driver, setting provisional pole at the moment by almost 2/10 or just under 2/10 of a just over 2/10 of a second. Sorry. Scopefielder is going to come across the line. We'll see, does he go any faster than what he did already? Scopefielder goes pole with a 1:08.753. That's 1/10 of a second faster than the Mercedes driver. So absolutely superb lap from the Swedish driver Scopefielder at the moment. It's Boy Better Know. That's Scott and Joel are both out on track at the moment, looking to set their final laps. Scott sitting behind Joel at the moment. He's going to get the effect of a little bit of DRS and a little bit of drag reduction from the car in front. Joel's going to go across the line and Scott goes across the line. Neither set a new or a better time than they'd previously set before. So that will be your results for qualifying, and exactly to plan for Scopefielder, who after taking an absolutely dominant victory last week out in America, and of course, because if you didn't watch the race, I employ YouTube channel, Scopefielder absolutely dominating the Circuit of Americas last week in the No Assist Championship. He on pole with a 1:08.753 in the Haas. Cracking lap there from him. Renault 9 will be pleased on the front row of the grid in the Mercedes with 1:08.853, and SJD make it an all Renault second row of the grid. Equally, Boy Better Know and Joel make it an all Toro Rosso third row of the grid, with Nicky 9095 in the Sauber is in 7th, with Rick in the McLaren in 8th, and the final row of the grid is row 5, and that is Speed Queen 80 and Mount. Speed got all do if she wants to make sure that she ensures she gets away from the first season here on 2018 with No Assist Championship, with title to add to her Tier 1 championship, whereas of course Scopefielder, he will be hungry to full title in No Assist, only started on the No Assist. Looks like we've got clear weather so far, slightly overcast, but nothing too bad for the. We can see rain rolling in hills. So I think the guys and the rest of the leagues on Tuesday and Wednesdays will be hoping to see the same and see the blue skies that are famed in Brazil flash over those flash over the hills of Interlagos. But at the moment, the guys here talking to their race engineers, trying to work out what the best strategy is for the race. Of course, a lot of them starting on those super soft tyres. Malk, I believe, possibly setting that one time on the medium. So imagine that he'll have to start on the medium time. So as he did in Silverstone, Malk will be on a massively different strategy to the rest of the field. And of course, that came back to really work out for him as he came and took the race victory. But we'll see if Malk can change what looked like a pretty poor session in qualifying into a much better race. It's the exit of turn 12 that's vital to a pretty decent lap around here, and it's especially when you're battling with someone else, you find yourself getting caught up in their dirty air. And equally, if you can stay in that dirty air and most of it, you get a decent run using DRS stream up towards turn 1. But if you can get a decent exit out of turn 12, it's ever so tempting to use that apex at turn 12 to shorten the corner, but the asphalt is really not in your favour there. It's very slippery and it can really kick the rear end of the car out there. So you've got to put the right curbs around here, because although you want to shorten the circuit, as they say, as much as possible, a lot of the curbs around here are off camber, so they will get underneath the car, they will hit that floor and that wooden barge board underneath, and it will turn the car ever so slightly sideways. And of course, these guys running No Assist, here you have and it can either put yourself into a little bit of a drift situation, or you can the complete flip side and put yourself pointing towards the barrier at vast speeds that are pretty much uncontrollable. So it's very tricky for these guys to make sure they get it right. Equally focusing on turn 7, that uphill right hand sector 2, pretty vital to maintain an accurate line through there, because the speeds are pretty consistent through there, and it's as soon as the tires start losing that edge when they're new, they slide ever so slightly, and you'll find yourself drifting out towards the left hand side of the track more and more. And of course you've got that runoff area that we saw Lewis Hamilton crash out in qualifying a few seasons ago, and we've seen accidents there in the past, but equally we've seen some absolutely fantastic overtakes into turn 6 and 7 in the past in Invictus. As the guys head out on their formation lap, we will you go the top 6 all having qualified on the super softs. Nikki, Rick and Speed Queen all going for the soft compounder tyre, and Malk back on the mediums. So 3 different strategy choices down the field have all been chosen. Speed Queen will have a we'll look to see what her movement is through the field on the harder compounder tyre, because that could really set up her race for essentially how she looks to win this title or lose this title. Does she lose too much time in the first sector if she can't get past anyone? Equally, we know how hard it is to get past people like Nikki and Rick, so she's got a real battle in her hands. And of course Joel and Scott are not going to want to let her pass. These 3 have battled pretty vociferously over the past, and they know not to mess with each other, and equally they know that they will not give each other an inch of room on the track surface if they can help it. And then you've got the tier 2 drivers all making up the top 4 positions at the moment, with Scopefielder, Renner, Delanger and SJD, which I believe Renner may be a tier 1 driver, but the 2 Renaults and the Haas definitely tier 2 drivers, and they are the top the top ones in the championship currently. Event, of course, with Mambo starting tonight, who will be pretty gutted that he's not here to take the race start, because it means he could potentially lose out on the tier 2 title, of course, if Scopefield does pick up those 3 points that he needs to take the tier 2 title. So the cars are lining up for the final time this season in the F1 No Assist Championship here at Invictus Racing League. The red lights will come on one last time. We have 4 and 5, and it feels like they've been held forever, but they are off and the cars leave. Smoke pouring from the back of the guys all spinning the tyres. It looks like we've held time for everyone. Yeah, Scopefielder maintaining the lead back in the start. The Toro Rosso's jumped ahead of SJD there, so Scott making a great start, moving ahead up into 4th position. He's going to want to make as many moves as possible. We know that he's decent at overtaking the Sauber, looking towards the inside, and Nicky making a superb move down the inside, and that's going to promote him up into 5th position. Him and Joel go side by side as they come up the hill. Equally, you see the Renault dropping right down, so SJD and having a absolutely the second Renault, that's Delanger 93 straight into the back of the Toro Rosso. So Delanger with front wing damage already. We saw the end plate disappear off, and both Renaults with an awful start, and front wing damage for the leading Renault at the moment. Delanger in 4th position. SJD's dropped all the way from 4th down to 8th position, so a poor start from both Renaults. Renner staying in 2nd position. Scott has made a great start up into 3rd. Nicky up into 6th, and Speed Queen has moved up from 9th place into 7th, so great start there for Speed Queen. Equally, as we see the Renault, who's going to be compromised on front downforce into the first corner. He's going to be swamped by this Toro Rosso on the outside. The Toro Rosso power not as powerful as the Renault, but he's going to have way more traction and downforce through these corners here, and the Renault is going to have to really try to keep the Toro Rosso behind him. And as the 2 almost, the Delange looks to try and cover him off, but the Toro Rosso was almost there, and it looks like the move's going to get done, and it is. Joel gets the move done on Delanger into turn 4. There, runs out ever so slightly wide, but look, Nicky 9095 already starting to line up the Renault behind, in front of him. Equally, Speed Queen not that far behind number 2, so Delanger might be... Oh, as we see Nicky a little bit too impatient there, possibly outbraking himself ever so slightly, knowing, or probably not knowing, that the Renault has got front wing damage, and he's going to look to get past as soon as possible. But De Lange, it's going to start to hold up these guys, and what it's going to do, it's going to really benefit Schofield, Renner, and the two Toro Rossos who have already got the move done. If De Lange can't get the move, or if he can't keep the cars behind him, it looks like he's built a little bit of a gap, but we'll see if Nicky can catch up to him down the straight into turn one. Bequin at the moment looks like the most likely to make a move onto the Sauber. Is she going to make a dive down the inside? She's going to have a look at it, but not quite. Nicky covers over the line, sees the Williams behind him. He's going to have to have eyes in the back of his head at the moment, and SJD equally starting to pick up a little bit of speed once again after that pretty poor start, dropping down to 8th position. Oh, as the Sauber diving down the inside of the Renault, is going to run wide, and that's going to allow the Renault back up the inside, and does Speed Queen get the impetus to go up the hill into turn 6 against Sauber. Nicky possibly a little bit over eager at the start of this race to get moves done, knowing that he's on the harder compound tyre. He's going to have a look once again, knowing that it's going to be slow into turn 5 for De Lange, but De Lange once again keeping these guys at bay at the moment. Is Nicky going to have a look to the inside? No, he's going to have to get held behind once again, but he's going to have to watch out because he's got a very fast Williams and a very fast Renault, what's looking like at the moment, coming behind him. But he's much closer to De Lange, coming out turn 12 this time into 14, and now he's caught right in the slipstream. It looks like he might have to go around the outside. De Lange's gone to the inside to try and cover him off, but Nicky's going to go around the outside. He's going to run wide because he's not got the aero to look after it, and oh, nicely defended there from De Lange. Just about held it on circuit. But once again, Nicky's going to come back at him. DRS is now in effect. He's going to have that extra 20 kilometers an hour speed, but he's run wide, and that's going to allow Speed Queen up the inside, cheeky as you like, and up she goes into turn 5 past the Sauber, and the Sauber looking at the back of 6th. So disaster there for Nicky, who's going to have a Renault now all over the back of him. Possibly a little bit too brave into some of those overtakes, took it a little bit too hard, and he's paid the price for it. And Speed Queen moving up into 6th position, and with Schofield currently leading the race at the moment to Renner 9, and Scott, boy better know, Speed Queen doing all she needs to at the moment to take the overall title. These guys still fighting over. Speed Queen making... Oh no, it's De Lange, sorry. I thought it was Speed Queen ever so slightly, but De Lange making that pit stop. It looks like he's decided he needs to pit for a front wing. He knows just how much time it will lose you coming around here, so possibly look to see him go on to the medium tyre and go long. Or is it going to be it's a set of the soft compound tyre, so it's going to be a 2-stopper for De Lange 93, and it looks like his race may have got a little bit harder. As once again Nicky getting twitchy through turn 4 and turn 5, and it's going to allow SJD to have a look at him coming around turn 6 and into turn 7. Not quite. Now Rick equally having a look at the rear end of the Renault. These guys all over each other to start this race. Of course, we're 5 laps into 36. And what we'll quickly do is we'll take a break from these guys, and we'll have a look at the top end, and we'll go on board with Schofield, who's lost the lead to Renner 9. So Renner 9 having... sorry, I missed... Oh, but Renner 9 having taken the lead, what must have been through the laps at some point. So Schofield having dropped down now into 2nd position. He's going to want to get back up. He knows that he needs a race victory. This is possibly a corner cut there for Scope, but Renner 9 is going to run slowly out of the exit of the Senna S's, and these 3 are going to go almost 3 wide as we head down into turn 4. I can't get the best camera angle for it. There you go. The Toro Rosso and the Mercedes and the Haas all battling over position 1, position 2 and position 3. Don't touch each other up here, boys. This is the worst place to get tangled up. You will end up in a barrier. Renner cuts in front of the Toro Rosso. Is the Toro Rosso going to dive down the inside? No, he thinks better against it, but Schofield has reclaimed the lead of the race. Renner back down into 2nd. But Scott doing very nicely, having impressed last week in COTA in America. He obviously had that contact into turn 1, spun out and fought back from the back of the grid to take home take home a podium position. So Scott was delighted with that fight back, and he's now going to have DRS on Renner, who looks like he's also going to get DRS on the Haas in front, but Scott's going to be way up behind the Mercedes as they come down into turn 1. No one's brave enough to make that move just yet. Schofield running ever so slightly wide through turn 1. Of course, running deep into turn 1 here really does compromise you through turn 2 and turn 3. And you can see there Renner 9 had a much better run, and he's going to get a run on the Haas down into turn 4. Looking to go around the outside, and Renner 9 he's switched down to the one. He's got the move back down on Schofielder, so Renner 9 moving back up into first position. These two swapping positions once again. We'll see Nicky 9905 is currently 1.2 seconds behind Speed Queen, 4th, 5th and 6th at the moment. Will stay on board with leaders at the moment as the three of them battle over first, second and third. Scott at the moment now starting to look at Schofield. Is he going to dive down inside? He'd be super brave there, but he decides against it. Schofielder really having to push hard in that Ferrari powered Haas, but you see Scott being really opportunistic there, thinking he's going to go for a dive down into the inside at turn 12 at Young Cow, diving up the hill, power down, and he gets the move done. So he's got that move, but Schofielder's got DRS, and he's going to be right alongside the Toro Rosso. The two are going to go side by side as we come down into turn 1. Who's got the... Schofielder will be superbly done round the outside into the inside, but Scott's going to cut back on him, and he's going to try and get the outside line. Both of them are going to keep going at it as we go down the DRS straight once again. Both of them have got DRS. This Toro Rosso is going to look to peel to the inside just now, but does he do it? No, he doesn't. He thinks against it, but Schofielder maintains second position. What this is doing, this is allowing Renner 9 to get ahead. Renner now 1.2 seconds ahead of these two, who are all over each other as we enter sector 2, and it's a superb battle over second position at the moment. And these two kind of want to work together to try and claw back the gap they're starting to lose to Renner 9. And Joel V520, I can see, has lost the position to Speed Queen 80, so Speed Queen moves up into 4th position, so she is currently taking the overall title of the No Assist Championship for season 1, the Invictus Racing League No Assist title. And yeah, Scope now only with a 0.34 second advantage over Scott at the moment. So Scott possibly looking, no, not once again, just tucks in behind, but look at the gap that's come down. So Schofielder starting to claw back. You can see Renner 9 have built it up to 1.3 second lead there. These two stopped fighting for half a lap, and they've managed to claw back almost half a second on the Mercedes at the moment. So possibly a little bit of a respite for Schofield and Scott in the Toro Rosso, just deciding to just calm down a little bit, just claw back into the back of that Mercedes as Mount picks up a 3-second time penalty, multiple warnings. He's currently running in 9th position at the moment on the medium tyre, so he's not made the moves that he's hoping to at the moment. We'll go down, we'll check in with this battle down for 6th, 7th and 8th, and Joel's started to really fall into the clutches of the guys behind us. SJD, who dropped many positions at the start, he's now down in 7th position, and it's these three that are battling over 6th, 7th and 8th place at the moment. Scott's 0.3 of a second behind Schofielder at the moment as they come up towards the first corner. It's looking like he's getting within attacking range. We'll go and quickly check in as they are. And Renner's the first one to dive into the pit lane off the super soft tyres. It's the Toro Rosso that gets the move down for what would be the current lead of the race. Oh no, it's a nicely defended line there from Schofielder. These two still nose to tail as we head round the S's into the DRS zone, down in towards turn 4. Scott still following Schofielder. You can see just how close it is. It's a matter of inches between the two, and almost a slight touch there. Scott has to bail out of it, but he still maintains the gap between himself and Schofielder. These two are really not wanting to give up any quarter whatsoever. Scott's possibly enjoying the tyre a little bit better than Scope is at the moment. He's finding a little bit more pace out of that Toro Rosso Honda engine. The Haas at the moment just about keeping it on track surface. And my eyes deceive me, or did it look like there is rain in the air? So as everyone feared these changeable conditions, you can see there is rain coming down from the hills in Interlagos, and it's starting to come down pretty quickly already. So we are going to see a pretty interesting middle part of this race as Scott gets the move done into turn one. Superb move down the inside there, DRS assisted. Of course, the DRS will be activated until the guys cannot run over a certain time distance over the lap, when it will get deactivated, and the guys will swap over to possibly the intermediate tyres. And this would be an absolutely unbelievable move for Schofield if he managed to get that done around the outside of turn 4 and 5 there, but he doesn't quite. Scott manages to hold him off, but Speed Queen, you can see she's starting to cut that lead down. It's now 3.3 seconds. She's moved up into third with Renner's pit stop. Renner onto the soft compounded tyres, so interesting there for these guys who are on the super soft tyres. They can see the rain coming down. They'll know it's going to start affecting them. Wet track and used softest compounded tyre is usually a recipe for disaster, so they'll want to drag these out as long as possible and then hope to fit the intermediates if we get to that stage. Of course, it might just be a quick shower, and therefore the heat and the track surface may be able to dry up the temperature a little bit. Schofield is starting to lose time now, so it's 0.9 of a second behind Scott. So Scott now starting to stretch his legs out in the lead, and we'll go on board with Nicky, who's now only 0.2 of a second behind Speed Queen down into turn 1. Nicky, the master of the dive into the apex of the corner, doesn't quite think about it this time. He's going to stay in the slipstream of the Williams, and the DRS is going to come open once again as they head down. Speed Queen tries to cover off the inside, doesn't quite get across in time, and that's allowed Nicky to dive down the inside, and Nicky does make that move done. So Nicky moving up into third position at the moment, currently sitting in a podium position. Schofield are now 0.7-0.6% behind Scott, so the time sitting around half a second to a second at the moment. Speed Queen now having dropped down from third into fourth, both on the soft compounder tyre. So the tyre, as Mount picks up a 3-second time penalty there, but it's Joel's the first one to jump onto the intermediate tyres. So lap 12, Joel has thought he's going to try and get the jump on anyone and hope that this rain comes down a little bit heavier. Of course, DRS is still activated, so he will compromise him ever so slightly. These guys will still have the ability to use the dry compounded tyres and DRS, which should be, proven by Speed Queen, but the DRS flap on the Williams not opening, even though she was within 1 second of the Sauber in front. We'll see the difference here between, as you can see, Joel having moved on to the intermediate tyres. We'll see if it's a little bit too early. Mount there on the still out there on the medium tyres that he started on. We'll see if Joel can get the power down. Of course, the grooved tyres, you can see Joel really struggling to get the power down, but equally he's made up quite a bit of time to Malk there in that final corner. Possibly a mistake there for the Red Bull driver, because you could see just how much twitching that Toro Rosso was doing coming out of turn 12 and turn 13 there. So as we'll go back on with the lead of the race, Schofield now cruised back up to within striking distance of Scott for the lead, 4.5 of a second as they enter turn 12 at Yankao. Stay off the curbs now. They're going to start to get slick, because they will get slippery, as Nicky just proves. There you see the Sauber sliding around the final corner there. Luckily he's managed to keep it in a straight line as they come down in towards turn 1. Schofield are deciding against the lunge in there. We've seen moves done throughout the years around Interlagos into turn 1. We know it can come good, we know it can also come bad, and we've seen many incidents and race ending incidents, whether it be on the game or in real life, around the centre S's into turn 1. We've got a yellow in sector 2. Who is it that's gone off circuit? It may be Joel. It looks like it might be the Toro Rosso. Not, it's Nicky 9095 who's lost it on the exit of turn 5 there. So Nicky, out of a podium position, has dropped down. It's the virtual safety car has been released for the cars at the moment. So having to go around as Joel picks up a drive, speeding under the virtual safety car. Did go down after Joel having an absolute Delanga 93 is into the pit lane to put on a set of intermediates. We'll see, do these guys come around this final corner and do they make a dive into the pit lane for the intermediates? It'll be interesting to see whilst the virtual safety car is out. Oh, it's a hit of the wall there for Scott. What happened there? It must be an early stop here. He must have to come into the pit lane now. Surely he's just chipped off with him. No, he doesn't. These two are going to go at it, but Scott really hit the wall there on the exit of turn 14. Not sure what happened at all. Schofield is going to go around the outside of him, down into turn 1. He's going to try and cut back on him, down into turn 2 and turn 3. Oh, you can see him slightly drifting the rear end of that Toro Rosso out. But possibly caught out, maybe caught out by the tyre temperatures, maybe caught out by the virtual safety car ending just as they got to the top of the hill at turn 13 and turn 14. But Scott running wide and straight into the wall on the right hand side of turn 14, and that would have really kind of upset the Toro Rosso driver, and equally Schofield behind would have been just licking his lips with "what are you doing?" and just went sailing around the outside of the Toro Rosso into the lead of the race once again. As these two, you can see the rain starting to come down now, a bit heavy. It's not spitting anymore. It's definitely starting to rain sideways. So these two are going to start crawling back to the pit lane, running wide there for Schofield. So for yet very interesting to see, and I'd like to know your thoughts, guys. What do you think is? Oh, as you can see, both of them struggling to get the power on as they go around turn 13. Is this something you think you'd be able to cope with? Do you want to stay out on the dries, or do you think it is time to come in for the intermediates? They're both staying out. Of course, DRS still going at the moment. You can see the rear flap on that Toro Rosso still open as we look back from this wonderful camera angle from the rear cockpit area of the Haas car. He's got the Toro Rosso all over him. Speed Queen has come in. She's done 15 laps on the soft compound tyres. Does she come in for the intermediates? Yes, she does. So Speed Queen also in on the intermediates. Joining SJD and Delanga, who both Renaults have decided to come in and make that stop. Of course, Joel, having come in for the intermediates, is now back out on the soft. So Joel deciding that he wasn't quite enjoying those wet compounder tyres, comes back out on a set of dries, and possibly in a few laps' time might have to go back in and set the same set of tyres on once again. So possibly a busy day for the Toro Rosso garage when it comes to Joel's side of the pit garage, where you can see the guys much slower there on the exit of turn 10 compared to earlier in the race. You can see not even on full throttle on the exit of turn 11 and turn 12. Still battling over the lead. Sorry. Now it's all about, in this wet race, trying to keep it online and making sure you don't make any silly mistakes. Since pit stop for Malk and for Joel. So does Joel put those intermediate tyres back on? I'm sure they probably kept him in the pit lane waiting for him. And it's a pit stop for Rick as well. So the guys now starting to slowly make their way into the pit lane. You can see 16 laps for Scope and Scott at the moment on the Supersofts, neither one wanting to blink and come in first and give the other one any opportunity at an undercut or an overcut. I think they both know that as soon as one goes in, the other one will follow him in straight away and try and get it done at the same time, not wanting to give anything up to chance. We've got a yellow in sector 2, and it's Joel that's retired. So a second retirement in the race for Joel V520 out there on as DRS is now disabled. So yeah, Joel, having done 2 laps on the soft compound tyres, was probably back in. So DRS is now disabled, which means, guys, it is not the right time to be out there on dry compounder tyres. You will be losing so much time. And do you know who might be benefiting from this? I'd say Speed Queen 80, sitting in 4th position at the moment. She's out there on intermediate tyres, and look at the time coming down as Scopefielder and Scott still out there on the super softs. And yeah, both of them having to come in now. Get it slowed down now. This is it. Lock those tyres up. Does he get it slowed down? He does. Scott also looking like he got it slowed down. We'll see now. Speed Queen, she's going to come up the hill, and it looks as if she might be taking the lead of the race, having stopped 1 lap ago for those intermediate tyres. She's going to come past the guys currently in the pit lane. There you go, for her third. I'm sure she's going to drop into second and first any moment now. Scott and Scope are both coming down the final, coming on the pit exit. She's jumped into second, and there you go. She's going to come out right into the battle of the lead of the race, and in fact she's going to come out alongside Scopefielder. Absolutely dead heat between the two of them. So she's made up around 12 seconds behind. She's dropped herself right into the battle of this race. So that two-way battle for the lead is now a three-way battle between some of the fastest drivers anywhere in Invictus. You've got Speed Queen 80, Scott and Scopefielder. And oh, you can see the Toro Rosso bump drafting the Williams. And in fact, he's the will not be pleased with that whatsoever. Scott just couldn't get the car slowed down for turn 8 there, and he's pushed ever so slightly, knocked the Williams driver off balance, of course. In this wet conditions, it's so easy just to lose control of the car, and obviously as soon as you're on the grass, especially in the wet, it's going to take up a lot of time recovering, and Speed Queen will be absolutely an SJD, like the word last time, incandescent with anger there as she has to make up all that time whatsoever, and she's now going to come under threat from Rick WR88 behind in the McLaren. And Speed Queen, if she's gonna, although she would be taking the title at the moment, she would have loved to have gone out with a race victory. It's one thing that she hasn't actually picked up this season so far, and she was well within a shot there as she came out. So Scott now re-engaging his battle with Scopefielder, so just the two of them once again. So it's going to be interesting to see if the stewards have got anything to say to Scott after the race. Possibly a slap on the wrist, possibly something else a little bit harsher than that. We'll look to see a final race talking to the Toro Rosso driver. An evening to everyone watching the stream tonight. Always good to have you on board. Feel free to drop any comments in if you want to see anything. If there's anything that you'd like me to talk about, I'm more than happy to find out what your thoughts are about the race and about the rest of the season, how it's gone, and equally how you're expecting your race to go this week if you are part of Invictus. And if you're not, why not? Check out our website at invictusracingleague.com. Get yourself signed up for the next season, season 2 of F1 2018. Get yourself on the grid for our races, and we've got a virtual safety car once again. So virtual safety car out as we've got Nikki leaving the session. So Nikki, unfortunately having retired earlier on, leaves the session, but is a virtual safety car possibly for the wide Renault of Malk, who had gone, looked like he was running into the infield at the exit of turn 12 there. So Malk, long way down now, almost a lap, or he has now been lapped by Scott and Scope. So not a great end to the season for Malk on possibly his last race from Invictus for a while, as we've still got virtual safety cars. You see the Renault behind still having to slow down, and of course we saw Scott struggle with the restart at the end of the last virtual safety car, hitting the wall in the exit of turn 14. Does he get caught out again this time, as the virtual safety car is still out? It's still got the yellow flags, and you don't want to be picking up any unwanted penalties. We saw Joel, before he retired, picking up that penalty for being too fast under the virtual safety car, and the green flags are back out, so we are back onto racing conditions. Overtaking is allowed once again. It looks like Scopefielder might have got a slight jump on Scott, and he's managed to stretch out about a second's lead over the Toro Rosso driver on the exit of that. So he's made up about half a second at the moment, so a good restart there for the Haas driver. You can see both cars almost drifting around the exit there at turn 13. Heading up the hill. Gap starting to form between the drivers now. We've got a 1.2 second gap between first and second. SJD 4 seconds back from Scott. Speed Queen, she's got it all to do now. 8.3 seconds back from the podium, with Rick now 2.7 seconds and falling back from the Williams. Renault 9, having started the race nicely and having led early on, has really struggled actually back there on the intermediate tyres, and Renault now sitting in 6th position, so he'll be disappointed how his midpoint of race is going, and the rain really coming down. You can see the track getting much slicker, and a little bit of spray starting to appear from the tyres of the cars. So we'll look to see if this is the same as what happened in Singapore a few races ago, where it went to intermediates and then it went to full wets and then back to intermediates. But it was Scott and Nicky stayed out on the intermediates the entire way, whereas the rest of the field dived in for the extreme wet tyres, and it was Scott and Nicky that actually benefited from that, with it going back to intermediates as they managed to just about tiptoe their way around the lap. So we'll look to see, do these guys do it once again? Do they stay out on the intermediate tyres if it starts to go full wet? But you know for sure around here that it's pretty tricky in the wet. We've seen accidents in the wet in F3 last season with cars sliding off, and equally we saw one a few seasons ago in no assist I believe it was, and F1, as Schofield picks up a 3-second time penalty. So the leader of the race picking up a time penalty for multi-warnings. That's 3 warnings running over that exit of turn 2 there. So he would be currently losing the lead of the race, but possibly with a post-race steward's inquiry into Scott at the moment, who knows who's going to take the lead of this race heading into the final 14 laps at the moment. So Schofield are currently leading the race by 0.8 of a second to Scott. SJD 5.4 seconds behind that, and Speed Queen starting to fall back from him as well. So SJD a little bit faster than the wheel in this wet period of the race at the moment. You can see the track really starting to get slick now, and the spray starting to appear from the rear end of the car as Joel leaves the session. Unfortunate end to the season for Joel, and he'll look to come back next season much stronger, and we know that he's got the pace and he just needs to transfer that over to consistency. He had a very good end to the season, unfortunately finishes it off with one retirement, and it's been a bit of a shame for Joel, who started off so well. As Spud says, SJD for the win. So SJD, yeah, we've seen he definitely excels in the wet. In fact, if you didn't get to see it, check out SJD's win in France earlier in the season. He absolutely utilised superb pace in the wet in France to take a brilliant victory there. So SJD definitely enjoys wet conditions on this game, and he's starting to catch up to the guys ahead. So it's now down to 5.1 seconds, and with Scott possibly in trouble later on, and the scope of that 3-second time penalty as Rick comes into the pits from 5th position. At the moment that promotes Renner up into 5th. As there you go, there's a 3-second time penalty for Scott. So 3 seconds from Scope, 3 seconds for Scott. So the top 2 at the moment, both sitting on that 3-second time penalty. So SJD only needs to get within the 2-second window, and he would, as Spud predicts, take home a race victory, which was looking mighty unlikely after the first lap, where he started in 3rd position, dropped all the way down to 8th position. So SJD clawing his way back, so he'll be pretty happy with himself after that really poor start in the Renault. Of course, the Langer 93 equally picking up first lap wing damage in the Renault. He's now down in 6th position. These two still the closest battle on track at the moment. It's now 1.1 seconds. SJD lost a little bit of time there. He's lost half a second on the exit of turn 12 and turn 13 there. So it's now back to 5.6, 5.7 seconds. So with 12 laps left to go, it's definitely, he's got work to do if he is to catch up to these guys in the lead. So the Renault is definitely going to be wheeled around by Cyril Beeple. He's definitely going to be telling his driver in the ear, just keep going, keep plugging at it, you'll get there. These two have got penalties. You need to get within 2 seconds of them. As we see, it's full wets for Malcolm now. So, and Rick's come in for the medium tyres. We'll check to see if that's a graphical glitch ever so quickly. And Rick out there. We'll look to see if it is a very strange choice. And you would say with the rain coming down that medium's probably is it? And it is the white wall tyres for the Renault. He's going to struggle to get that one slowed down. Just about. And in stark contrast, the Red Bull team have gone for the extreme wets. So Malk, with nothing to lose, deciding, well, there isn't standing water just yet, but I'm going to go out there and see what I can do, see if I can set a lap faster than what I was doing on my intermediate tyres. Rick equally joins him on the extreme wets after that installation lap out, deciding to have a little bit of a drift competition, I'm sure, on his own, as Malk struggling to get the power down as he exits turn 9 there into turn 10. Car all over the place, you can see slow on the exit there, and that's a there we go. Thought that was a bit of a rubbish camera view, but it's in fact you can see the Renaults coming up the hill as you see the Malk exiting. Of course, oh, you can hear just how much Malk is having to feather that throttle pedal, heading up the hill, not wanting to lose control whatsoever. No one else having come in yet, so it's just Rick and Malk at the moment who have decided to go for the wet tyres, and Malk putting on a show round turn 1 there, kicking the rear end of the Red Bull out. He's going to come out of the centre S's. Now you want to stay on the wet line, you don't want to be driving on the drier line at the moment. You want to get as much water into the grooves of those extreme wet tyres, clear as much as possible, because that's how they work best. They don't like running where they get warm or get hot. They will start sliding even more. Malk powering up the hill now in towards turn 6 and turn 7. Looks like he might, it's a nicer run through there that time, so the track possibly getting a little bit wetter. It's still going to feel like it takes forever to get around this second sector here, where it's much slower in this very fast circuit. The lead down to 1.1, 1.2 seconds now as Malk picks up a 3-second time penalty, running over the exit of turn 10 there, so picking up, I believe that's his third 3-second time penalty. Staying on board here with Malk as he's going to really kick out the rear end of that Red Bull on the exit of turn 12 at Young Cow there, over the grass as well. So it's definitely a bit of a rallycross for the Red Bull driver here in Interlagos. He stays out on circuit. We'll go on board with some other drivers are out on track at the moment. In fact, what we'll do is we'll sit on board with champion-elect at the moment. Looks like we've got a yellow in sector 2's cleared. We'll go on board in the cockpit with our current tier 1 champion, and if all stays as it is at the moment, your overall no assist champion, as she looks towards, I believe that's Rick that's ahead of her, so possibly lapping Rick, or a little bit of a twitch on coming out of turn 12 there for Speed Queen 80. Powers on into 7th gear, up into 8th, so we go still going full speed down into turn 1. Get it slowed down, don't lock up as much as you can. She does nicely. A slight lock up of the front left there, but not enough to compromise on the exit of turn 2 and into turn 3 there. In fact, there's a pretty beautiful run through the centre S's there for the Williams driver. Now down onto the straight in towards turn 4. Get it slowed down. You don't want to be running onto the curbing too much at this point. And here she is. We've got a yellow in sector 2 once again. We'll see if that possibly might be Malk. It's cleared once again, so possibly a slow driver being lapped. Oh, nicely done there for Speed Queen, who's using the curbs beautifully at the moment. Many drivers would stay off them because they would be like driving on ice, but running on the exit of turn 7 there, and she used them pretty perfectly, ever so slightly hard on the brakes into turn 10 there, but straightens up the car. Now this is where it's hard for the drivers to knock the rear end out here, running slightly wide there through the exit of turn 11 into turn 12. Nicely done there. Now power up the hill, get it full throttle down. There we go, up in 6th, runs on the limiter ever so slightly into 7th, now up into 8th, and she's going to go across the line. Speed Queen 80, and that was a lap on board with your champion-elect with the no assist championship. And she's starting to catch up to Rick at the moment, as it looks like she may be coming up to lap the McLaren driver. SJD at the moment, he's sitting in 3rd position. He's dropped back now, so was starting to catch up. You see Malk now starting to come offline to allow these drivers to get past. So yeah, Malk dropping down is So SJD 8.7 seconds, was down to around 5.1, but he's dropped back by 3.6 seconds. So although, like I said, he did enjoy that, the conditions around France, possibly the changes in camber in the track makes it, you can see they're locking up pretty heavily into turn 12 there. But he does look like he will be taking home at the moment third position as Renner picks up a 3-second time penalty. It's a stop for SJD, as I just say. It looks like he'll be picking up the place SJD comes in. Is it a set of the extreme wets for the Renner driver? It is. So Speed Queen's going to come across the line and she's going to go past. She stays out on the intermediate tyres. The rain is starting to come down now. We'll look to see. There's the Renault. So he's not far behind. So we'll look to see now who has got the pace. Is it towards the intermediates? To the intermediates, of course, they're a very versatile tyre. They will last a long time on very tricky conditions. But as soon as you start to see standing water appear on the circuit, the intermediate tyres will start to aquaplane. And they will slide around. As you can see, puddles forming on the inside line there and on the outside. So this is where she really needs to show her mettle if she's going to stay in a podium position and finish off the season strongly. You need to make sure you're staying on the racing line. Look at that darker line that's appeared on that racing line. If you go off it on these intermediate tyres, yeah, look at the puddles forming on the curbing there on the exit of turn 9. It will really upset the car and you'll find yourself pointing in the wrong direction. Of course, she's already suffered that at the hands of Scott earlier in the race, but we see her now coming around the final corner. The lead at the moment behind her is to 7 seconds behind to SJD. We'll look to see at the end of this lap, when he's got those extreme wets up to temperature, does he start to claw it back as she laps Malk in the Red Bull. SJD, the highest runner at the moment on extreme wets. He's in 4th position, Renner 9 behind him, still on the intermediates. Equally, Delanger 93 on the intermediates, having done 15 laps. So Delanger currently the longest serving lap driver out on track that's still on old rubber. So 15 laps on those intermediates. They're going to start to be feeling a little bit ropey by now. 7.9 seconds SJD now, so possibly the wrong decision at the moment. She's driven pretty superbly since that spin. She's kept it nice and tidy, and of course you do not want to curse her. You found myself doing that far too many times in the last 2 seasons. But got a yellow in sector 2. That might be Malk running wide to let a lapped car through. Yeah, yellow quickly clears. But she 8.2 seconds for SJD, so possibly the wrong decision, unless something drastic happens in the final few laps of this race. It looks like Speed Queen may come home with a final podium position to sew up what is looking like the overall No Assist Championship to add to her Tier 1 Championship, reclaiming it, of course, after Game of the Best took it last season. Of course, not in the league this season, so it was hers to take, and she wanted to come back and dominate. And she, after starting off the season a little bit shaky, took a few races to get back into the swing of things, and after that she's been a pretty consistent top 4 runner, yet to pick up that elusive race victory, but enough points to see off the battle of Scott, Scopefielder, Humberstone and Delanger. So she's definitely deserved the title if, of course, she does make those final 5 laps. Scott still 1.5 seconds behind Scopefielder. Is he really twitches on the exit of turn 12 there to get the power down on the Toro Rosso, possibly getting the throttle on just a fraction too early, and it's going to cost him a little bit of time. He has lost him about 0.3 of a second there to the Haas driver who's leading the race. The Scopefielder looks to take consecutive race victories to end the season in pretty fantastic form. He would take second in the overall title. He would take home the Tier 2 Championship as well. So Scopefielder will be wishing for Speed Queen to have a slight incident in the last few laps and hit the wall and end her race, because in this position, if she was to retire, he would take the overall title. So Scopefielder, he's put himself in the right position. He's gone from the lead of the race, having battled with Scott and with Renner early on. He's managed to get back up into the lead. He currently has that lead by 1.956 seconds at the moment. So he is doing all he can to take home the overall title. But of course, Speed Queen 80, she's been so consistent, moving up from 9th position up into 3rd at the moment. So Speed Queen doing pretty nicely for herself, and possibly putting the champagne on ice in the Williams garage at the moment, waiting for her to come up. But if that rain comes down any heavier, these guys out on the intermediates will start feeling the effects of it. SJD still 8 seconds behind Speed Queen, so he's not making inroads too much on her at the moment. You see Scott struggled to get the car slowed down for turn 1 there. These two still separated by about 2 seconds, and whilst these two are still fighting, we'll go aboard and we'll catch up with some of the other guys that we haven't seen too much of this race. Renner 9, of course, was battling for the lead of the race earlier on, came in and made that pit stop, and it hasn't quite worked out for him. He's still stuck down in 5th position, so he'll be disappointed that what was looking like a decent result for Renner with a possible podium to finish off the season is now going to be what looks like a 5th placed finish. And equally behind him, Delanger 93, having started the race in a decent qualifying position, picked up front wing damage very early on at turn 6 and turn 7, had to pit early on, I believe it was lap 3, and then he is now down in 6th position, 9.4 seconds behind Renner 9, but equally he's got a monumental gap behind Turek, as we've got a yellow in sector 1 and sector 2. Who is it that's gone off? And your guess is as good as mine there. But Scott is now 2.8 seconds, so possibly Scott running wide, running deep into one of the corners. He's lost a lot of time, but of course he will know that he's got that penalty, and the Scopefielder will equally not know that he's got that penalty. So Scope will want to bridge out that 3-second gap, hoping that he can stretch out a lead enough to maintain the penalty gaps. Of course, if he picks up another one, it may be curtains for him when it comes to the race victory so far. So Scopefielder is still needing to keep it on the black stuff in between the 2 white lines. Of course, the stewards don't like it if you decide to go off and make your own track. Almost a joker lap we've seen for some of the guys as they decided to make their own track layouts over the season a couple of times. But Scopefielder is pretty consistent when it comes to his penalties, doesn't tend to pick up too many. And at the moment he's doing quite nicely for himself in the leader race in the Haas, with 3 laps at the moment left to go. Of course 2 after this, 35 and 36, to finish off the first season of Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship here in Brazil. It looks like Scope's starting to build that lead ever so slightly over Scott, so Scott possibly settling for 2nd position at the moment. Speed Queen way behind, 33 seconds behind, but SJD starting to catch up ever so slightly. It's now 6.6 seconds, but with 2 laps left to go, it'll be a pretty monstrous effort for the Renault driver if he was to catch up that 6.5 seconds. And she'd have to make a real mistake, which is something we rarely see from Speed Queen 80 in the No Assist Championship. As she comes across the line, she's going to start her penultimate lap of the race. Down into turn 1, we'll go quickly on board back with race leader Scopefielder as he comes around sector 2 for the second to last time. These guys starting to struggle. They're out on the intermediate tyres now, but they know they've got to do just around about 15 more corners to end this race. It's almost coasting around turn 11 there for Scopefielder, as he now doesn't want to push too hard on the throttle pedal heading up the hill. Don't want to, whilst you're off camber, put too much down onto that throttle. You will spin up the rear tyres and put the car into a sideways slide. still giving it the full beans, heading down into turn 1 here, and it's the final lap of the season for Scopefielder and for our championship. And he's going to come through the centre S's. And Scopefielder, Swedish driver, having ended the season with a superb vein of form, he's going to look to improve over the off-season and into the next one. And without jinxing him too much, looks to be taking the race victory this evening in a pretty excellent race for him and in the Haas team. So Gunther Steiner will be pretty ecstatic with his driver. And of course, guys, send in your thoughts for driver of the day. Sab says it's Scope once again, and you tend to agree, although Speed Queen definitely, after that spin and the contact, recovering to third position. She's done very nicely for herself. 6 seconds, she now has that gap, 5.8 over SJG, so he's trying his best to claw back the time. It's definitely looking like it's starting to stretch over to the full wets now, and Malk possibly is going to get overtaken for a second time on the head up to the last time, but it's going to be Scopefielder. He's going to come across the final 2 corners, and he's going to take home his second consecutive race victory. Scopefielder takes home the victory in the Haas. Scott in the Toro Rosso will come home in second position. Great result there for Scott. Speed Queen 1980 is a little bit further behind, 35 seconds behind. She's just exiting turn 10 there, sorry, into turn 11. And Speed Queen 80, she's got 3 corners to go, and she will confirm herself as your Invictus Racing League no assist champion for season 1. Final 2 corners for her and the Williams team, and finally we have a champion, and across the line, and there she is. It's Speed Queen 80, your no assist champion for season 1 with Invictus Racing League. SJD comes across the line. He made it down to 5.1 seconds, so couldn't quite make up the time. He'll be a little bit disappointed that he had to come in and set those, put on the extreme wets. Possibly could have picked up a podium. He comes in 4th. Renner 9 and Delanger are battling it out over 5th and 6th. Delanger having made up to 2.2 seconds behind the Mercedes, but it looks like Renner is going to take it. We'll look to see if anything happens on penalties, but the Mercedes is going to come across the line for the final time this season. Renner comes in currently and provisionally in 5th. Delanger is going to come across the line, and he does jump Renner, so Delanger moving up into 5th and Renner down into 6th position. So a disappointing end to the race for Renner after that early pace sees him drop down, unfortunately. So that is the end to what was a very interesting and a very tricky race. Weather conditions changing the entire time, but it is Scopefielder in the Haas that takes the championship for tier 2, and Speed Queen takes the no assist overall title. So 2 champions on the podium will both be pretty happy with themselves. Of course, Scope can't fault Speed Queen for finishing on the podium, but he will be feeling a little bit disappointed, having done all he could to take home the overall title. But Speed Queen doing a fantastic job to come home in 3rd position. As we look to see, there is your final standings for the season. Scopefielder takes home the win. He comes home for the Haas team in 1st. Boy better know, that's Scott. In 2nd in the Toro Rosso. Speed Queen in 3rd. SJD comes home in 4th with Delanger 93 in 5th. Renner 9 and Rick come home 6th and 7th. Malk finishes unfortunately 3 laps down in 8th, but comes home with 3 points, whereas we lost Joel and Nikki earlier on in the race, and it looks like it's a fastest lap for Scott of a 1:12.089. So Scott takes home the fastest lap of the season. Of course, guys, not the only race for Invictus this week. We do have several races to come over the final few days of the season. Tomorrow night we have Performance 1 and Performance 2. Performance 1, we see Skyzy. He leads the title by 10 points ahead of Buglugby and SJD. Skyzy yet to win this season, but he can be beaten on countback by Meg and SJD. Meg has 2 wins, SJD has 1, so they both need a win or a second position, and Skyzy to either non-score or get 1 point. So three-way battle for the title in Performance 1. Performance 2, Wave Intel looking to defend his Performance League title, sitting 2 points ahead of Tier 2 champion from tonight, Scopefielder, sitting on Wave Intel on 69, Scopefielder on 67. Equally, DeLanger needing a win and Wave to pick up 0 points or ninth and lower from Scope to win. So there's still all to play for in Performance 2. Wave would win the title with a win and with Scope third or lower. F1 on Wednesday night, I believe Sam Bam Kid has confirmed himself as the champion last week in Kota. F2 equally, Betrayer picks up his second consecutive title after picking up the F3 title. He picks up the F2 one this season out, so Betrayer with 2 titles in a row, and equally he's joined in the top 2 by Wave Intel after coming home second last season. He follows Betrayer home once again in second. He's sewn up second place in F2, so those two head up F2. And I believe, as I said earlier, Colin J and Sir Spud, they go for it on F3 on Wednesday night. It's a straight shootout between the two of them, the Mercedes versus the Haas team. Whoever wins would take home the F3 championship. If both retire, it would be Spud winning on countback on 3 wins to Colin's 2. And equally in F3, 4 drivers can still come home in 3rd position, take home the bronze place, and that's Jamie Met, F1 Richard, Craig and myself, still in with a chance of picking up 3rd. Craig owns the tiebreaker there with 2 wins this season. So there is all to play for across all of the leagues, so make sure you catch up with all of our streams across this week. Tuesday, of course, Performance 1, Performance 2, Wednesday, F1, F2 and F3. You can find out all of our details on our Twitter page at InvictusRL. Equally, if you want to check out the league, go to our website, invictusracingleague.com. Check out the sign-up page where you can get yourself on the grid for Season 2. Equally, if you want to check out the league tables for yourself, they are all there for you to view and choose who you want to win as your title, or choose who you would prefer to see in the title picture at the end of this season, the end of this week. But that is for me for this season. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be in the commentary box once again for you for the No Assist Championship. I hope I brought you a pretty exciting and enthralling season. It's been an absolute joy to provide some excellent commentary and some really entertaining moments over the season. Thank you for all of your comments over the season and for getting engaged. It's always good to see the league going from strength to strength, and I hope to see you all next season. Of course, we'll be back for pre-season in a few weeks' time, so make sure you keep up with our Twitter streams for all details about that. But for tonight and for now, thank you very much for joining me. It's been an absolute joy. I will see you next season, and good night.